Hi everyone, I'm Jamie, and welcome to EPT, English Podcast Time, the show where we discuss fascinating topics to spark your curiosity, and maybe even learn something new along the way. I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Sophia.
Welcome, I'm Sophia. Today we're going to explore something that's really fascinating, the literary contrast between Russian melancholy and Western optimism.
It's one of those things that's almost built into the DNA of the literature of these regions, isn't it? Russian literature often leans into sorrow, existential dread, and the deep questions of human life, while Western literature, especially in recent centuries, often finds its center in hope, progress, and optimism.
Exactly. And we're going to break it down through some of the greatest works of literature from each side. Think Chekhov, Dostoevsky, and Tolstoy versus the likes of Hemingway, Fitzgerald, and Austen.
Russian literature, from the very beginning, seems to have a certain darkness to it. There's an overwhelming sense of existential questioning. Take Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, for example. It's a novel that explores the mind of a man so deeply disillusioned with life that he retreats into a state of complete isolation.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how Dostoevsky paints the picture of a man who isn't looking for answers, but wallows in the uncertainty of life. It's the idea that maybe there are no answers at all. There's a real psychological depth in Russian literature. It's not just about suffering, but about why we suffer, and whether it's worth enduring.
Right, and that suffering, often portrayed as existential pain, seems to be integral to the Russian narrative. It's like a deep awareness of life's impermanence, where nothing is ever quite resolved. That's evident in Chekhov's short stories, too. Characters often feel trapped in their lives, yearning for something more, but never able to reach it.
The Seagull, one of his most famous plays, showcases that theme so perfectly. We follow these characters who seem to be searching for meaning and happiness, but they're stuck in their own personal conflicts. There's no catharsis, no redemption, just a sense that life goes on even in its disappointments.
And I think that's a key aspect of Russian melancholy. It's almost as if the unresolvable is what gives life its shape. The Russian approach doesn't promise any hope or light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. It's not that Russian writers only focus on sorrow, but rather that they confront life's most painful truths without offering false hope. Take Tolstoy's War and Peace. The novel spans years, but it doesn't give you the sense that there's any grand meaning behind it all. There's the constant thread of human suffering, but also the randomness of life's victories and failures.
Now, when we look to the West, there's a stark contrast in tone. Sure, Western literature does touch on tragedy and sorrow, but optimism is never too far behind. The idea of progress, growth, and the individual striving toward success is a huge part of Western storytelling.
That's true. If we look at the works of someone like Jane Austen, for example, there's always this sense that no matter how complicated the character's journey, there's going to be a resolution. Characters like Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice face challenges, but there's always a sense that things will work out, that personal growth and change are possible.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Western literature tends to offer redemption through personal agency. In Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, you have an old fisherman struggling against the sea, and while he doesn't technically win, there's this quiet triumph in his persistence. It's about enduring, yes, but also about the potential for personal success even if it's not always clear-cut.
Yes, and it's interesting to see that contrast with Russian stories, where that kind of hopeful resilience is almost always absent. In Western literature, you find characters who want to change, and sometimes they do. In Russian literature, the desire is there, but more often than not, the change never comes. It's about the effort rather than the outcome.
So, we've established these clear divides, but what about those instances where these two perspectives overlap? It's not always as cut and dry as Russian sadness versus Western hope.
Right. One example that comes to mind is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. On the surface, it might seem like a quintessential Western tale of ambition, the American dream, and optimism. but there's an underlying sense of loss and disillusionment that haunts the entire story. Jay Gatsby, despite his wealth and determination, can't escape his own past or achieve his ideal future. It's a mix of both that yearning optimism and that Russian melancholy.
That's an interesting take. I also think of a novel like 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which blends magical realism with deep existential questions. It's a novel that spans generations, with plenty of love, loss, and change. Yet, throughout it all, there's this ongoing sense of futility, as if time is passing in cycles, and nothing really changes. It's as if both the West's optimism and the East's melancholy are in constant dialogue.
Yes, and it's that tension between the two that makes literature so rich. If you only had one perspective, it would feel incomplete. Maybe that's why readers keep coming back to these works. They resonate on a deeper level because they capture the complexities of life. There's never just one answer, one emotion, or one outcome.
As we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear that both Russian and Western literatures offer us valuable insights into the human experience. The Russian emphasis on existential suffering and the Western focus on progress and personal triumph reflect two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. What makes literature so powerful is that it reflects life in all its complexity. And in that complexity, we see both the beauty and the pain. So, whether you're drawn to the quiet despair of Russian writers or the hopeful resolve of Western authors, both offer something essential in understanding ourselves.
And that's what we love about literature, right? It's a mirror, reflecting all the contradictions of life.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today's episode of EPT SSION. Got you thinking about the ways literature from different cultures can shape our understanding of the world.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Let us know in the comments below and feel free to suggest any topics you'd like us to explore next. We're always looking for fresh ideas and love hearing what you're interested in.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with anyone who might enjoy the conversation.
We'll see you next time with more exciting discussions. Take care, and remember, your story matters.